Twinspires Stakes preview for the races coming up on Saturday, August the 1st from coast to coast, east to west, Saratoga to Del Mar, the summer places to be, at least in a normal year as we continue to wager online at twinspires.com and on the TwinSpires app. James Scully, Ed DeRosa, Scott Shapiro, and Ed, we'll start with you. What are you most looking forward to on this big stakes weekend?
I'd definitely say the Whitney Stakes for me. A lot of gnashing of teeth about the small field, but these are grade one horses for the most part, certainly 4 of the 5. And Tom Statot looked awesome when we saw him at Churchill. He's shipping east. He's going to have to prove it at the Graveyard of Favorites. And will he or won't he? We'll find out what I think when we actually get to the race, but that's what I'm looking forward to.
How does that slide in from a historical perspective, James?
Yeah, it's a 92nd running of the Whitney Stakes, Joe, and it's one of the most important instrumental races for older horses, who's who of list of winners. And this year's field, like Ed said, it's a select field, but all 5 horses are millionaires. At least 3 of them have Horse of the Year aspirations. Should be a dynamite race, so definitely the Whitney Stakes for me.
Well, Scott, there's other win-and-you're-in races this weekend besides the Whitney. What are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of good options, Joe. I'm looking forward to the Shared Belief, though, because the Kentucky Derby, less than 40 days away, I think 37 to be exact, and Honor AP's running. He's one of the top choices at this point in the Derby. Also looking to see how Cezanne runs. Hasn't lived up to billing thus far, but I think potentially he might be able to steal this one and get a spot in the starting gate. So the road to the Kentucky Derby goes in Del Mar.
We're going to talk about 3 stakes from Saratoga and 2 from Del Mar coming up on Saturday, August the 1st, like I mentioned. And for me, you guys kind of touched on it. Like, it's so weird that we've got a Kentucky Derby prep and Breeders' Cup Classic and Breeders' Cup Distaff preps all in the same weekend. It's just obviously unprecedented. The 3-year-olds, in essence, after the Derby are prepping towards the Classic as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how all these horses match up moving forward. Let's start with the personal ensign. And speaking of the Breeders' Cup Classic and potentially the Breeders' Cup Distaff, where she's 0 for 2, Midnight Bisou. Is it going to be the Distaff? Is it going to be the Classic? Maybe we'll get a clearer picture after the running of the personal ensign. She's going to be the odds-on favorite.
Yeah, and rightfully so. And I do think this could give us some classic clues because she has to carry 124 pounds in here, Joe, giving 6 to most of her rivals, including Vexatious and Point of Honor, both of which I think have an upset chance with that weight shift. If she's able to handle 124, she actually get a weight break in the Classic. Now, she would probably run between now and then anyway, but I think if she can carry 124 against these, that would augur well, maybe for a mile and a quarter under 122. And this is a key race for that reason. I'm looking to probably play against her, to be honest, at 1 to 5. The value just isn't there given her numbers and the weight shift, but she's special. And if she earns it here, she's certainly a Horse of the Year threat.
Scott, she didn't even have to take a deep breath in the Fleur de Lis. But again, who did she beat? I mean, Serengeti Empress was not on top of her game that day. This is a slightly tougher test.
It's a slightly tougher test, but that move was pretty electrifying. I remember thinking, wow, Serengeti Empress is loose on the lead. You never know. Boom. She's done. You know, that was a quick move, and I think there's enough pace in here to set things up. I don't think some of her rivals like Motion Emotion, who's likely to be on the lead, I don't think she loves a mile and an eighth, maybe Point of Honor, but is she really going to pass Midnight Bisou? Is that really going to happen, or how's she going to beat her? I'm all in Midnight Bisou. Not going to bet her to win or anything, but not playing against her.
James, there's other good females in the country right now, and we've seen a lot over the course of the last several years. Where does Midnight Bisou fit in? And then what do you think about her obvious chances to get the job done, which she should, at least on paper, in the personal ensign?
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting rival in there in Point of Honor because I still think she has a lot of upside. She's only 4. She's coming off a couple of good races. If anybody's going to beat Midnight Bisou, it's going to be her. But realistically, Midnight Bisou towers over the Distaff division. If she's going to have rivals in the Breeders' Cup Distaff this fall, it's going to be from the 3-year-old fillies.
Yeah, if I'm betting this race, I'm pounding the 3-6 exacta. Midnight Bisou over Point of Honor, and maybe saving a little bit the opposite way, because I agree with you, James. Point of Honor, 3rd when she was left at the start in the Apple Blossom, then a narrowly beaten 2nd in the Phipps at Belmont, going a 1-turn mile and a 16th last out. I think that's the way to play the race, and Midnight Bisou, obviously, the one to beat. let's move ahead towards the Whitney short field, Ed, and you alluded to it in the open. This is a win and you're in for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. Milan and eighth here, and four really, really good horses and an obvious pace setter. You're looking for value, maybe playing against Midnight Bisou. You looking for value here too?
Yeah, I think there's going to be value on By My Standards, not because I think he's the most likely winner. That's definitely Tom's D'Etat, who I pegged at 9-5 to win the race, but he'll probably be 3-2, 7-5. So win bet there. But By My Standards, I definitely think it's the second most likely winner. I think Improbable has some holes that I expect Scott might mention. Code of Honor is certainly no slouch, but his number power isn't to what By My Standards is run. When I look at the numbers, I see a 105 and a 107. That's good enough if Tom's D'Etat doesn't bring his A-plus game. By My Standards is my bet, even as he's not the most likely winner.
By My Standards ran the best race of his career figure-wise last time out, James, but he was no match for Tom's D'Etat, who won under a hold. This horse is incredible. I can't believe how good he's gotten. In his 7-year-old year, he's never been better.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see the trip he gets because he had shown ability to stalk more Tom's D'Etat had in his previous races, but he was up close to the pace from the start of the Stephen Foster. That pace could be a little bit contentious with Improbable, Mr. Buff out on the front end. Code of Honor is a horse that worries me. If anybody's going to beat Tom's D'Etat, it's him. He absolutely loves the track, 2 for 2. There's something to be said for affinity for that surface. So it's either going to be Tom's D'Etat or Code of Honor, in my opinion, Joe.
And Scott, we saw Tom's D'Etat at Churchill Downs, a wild performance in the Clark, wild performance in the Stephen Foster. A lot of people have him on top of their classic rankings with just a couple of months to go till that race. But I still think he's maybe a little bit underappreciated.
He could be if he was trained by maybe a little bit of a bigger name trainer. No disrespect to Al Stahl, I think does a fantastic job. But if it was a Pletcher, a Chad Brown, a Bob Baffert, maybe a little more respect. But yeah, I don't see who's going to beat him. Maybe Code of Honor if they go very fast up front, but he'll have to really run a career best effort. Tom's D'Etat doing so well. Ed spoke to my thoughts on Improbable. He got the 1.25 miles at Santa Anita, but that was against much lesser competition in there. And I don't see how By My Standards beats this horse. Now, the one thing I will say is they have to know they have to be more aggressive. There's no way By My Standards is going to come from behind with Tom's D'Etat. Corey Lanery a little passive last time in the Stephen Foster. I would expect Jose Ortiz to send Erod Ortiz Jr. and Improbable to try to get the jump. Tom's D'Etat is going to have to sit off the pace to win this one, and I expect him to do so without issue.
He's been just so good lately. He's going to get a clean trip from the outside. Yeah, he beat Improbable going a mile 2 races back over a wet fast track. That wasn't his trip. 9 furlongs is in his sweet spot. And for me, it's going to be a cold exacta. Again, 5-3 over Code of Honor, saving a little bit the other way. But I'm going to take what the race gives me and go with Tom's D'Etat on top. The most bettable of the 3 stakes on Saturday at Saratoga, guys, is the Jerkens, a grade 1 7 furlongs, no parole. It was an easy winner of the Woody Stevens at Belmont on June the 20th, James, when gate to wire by more than 3 lengths. He's going to be on the lead here. We'll see how the race shakes out moving forward, but I see some other horses in this race, and I think you guys agree with me that are going to offer some value.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And no parole got loose early on in that Woody Stevens. I just don't see that happening. I mean, 8 rings is drawn in post 2. Big race Bob ships him in. He's training lights out at Del Mar. He is sending hard from the gate, in my opinion. We know what Tap It to Win did in that 1-turn race at Belmont Park 2 races back where he just blitzed rivals. That pace is going to be hot and contentious. I think it's going to set up for an off-the-pace runner. I like Shoplifted. I thought he was at a disadvantage last time, moved too early. I know he loves Saratoga. He's not your only option of the off-the-pace types, but the price is going to be right, 12-1 on the morning line, and that's a horse I'm really looking forward to betting this weekend, Shoplifted.
Scott, this is the kind of race when I look at it and I try to think like you, thinking like James, looking for a price here.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Tap It to Win makes a lot of sense from the outside, but could have been overexposed, kind of a lot of races in one period of time and all in the Belmont, so maybe won't be at his best. And James mentioned no parole, not as likely to get off on an easy lead in here. A lot of options, Joe, but the one that I landed on, I'm hoping to get a little better price than the morning line, is 3 Technique. This horse also going to come from off the pace. I think wants to go 1 turn, finally getting back to the 1 turn after trying 2 turns at Oakland Park over and off going twice. in the winter time, got some time off, expecting 3 Technique to run a big race in this one, Joe.
Now, Ed, you were a no parole fan going into the Whitney Stevens and a bigger one coming out.
Yeah, I think he's awesome. I share the concerns of James and Scott, though, regarding the early pace. It's just impossible for me to see him getting the similar trip that won the Woody Stevens. But I also think he does potentially have the talent where he's just faster than everyone early and then no one can catch him late. I absolutely think if you're looking on the front end, he's the only viable option to win between Tap It to Win, 8 Rings, etc. I do actually like Captain Bombastic, though, to pick up the pieces. Pretty similar handicap to what James and Scott came up to, just a different horse. But since I'm leaning on Tom's Day Taunt by my standards in the Whitney, happy to use some prices here. I'm definitely using both James and Scott's choices, but I do have Captain Bombastic on top. His Brisnet late pace ratings in the mid-90s, the last 3 races. That would be good enough here if no parole has any hiccup in his giddy up in the final 16.
For multi-race sequence wagering, I'm going to go with Shoplifted, 3 Technique, and Tap It to Win. All horses you guys have talked about. Going to fade no parole, although I do think he can get the job done in a pretty intriguing edition of the Jerkens, race number 10 at Saratoga on Saturday. Let's move over to Delmar, guys, in a points race for the Kentucky Derby. The shared belief, 50, 20, 10, 5. You've got Honor AP's already got 120 in the bank. Cezanne has 0 points, James. This race has a lot of important implications for the Kentucky Derby because there are some horses in here that need the points. Honor AP doesn't.
Honor AP doesn't, and Honor AP is lightly raced. He's run twice since he broke his maiden in October. He hasn't missed any works. He's worked like 35 times since then. With the Derby being 5 weeks from Saturday, I think Sheriff's 100% doesn't need him 100%, isn't going to have him cranked for it, doesn't want to empty the tank. And first off, Uncle Chuck, it looks like it's going to scratch for the Travers. No D'Or could go to the Ellis Park Derby on August 9th. Could be only a 4-horse field. So even a horse like Cezanne, who's my top pick, I think he can get out there, get loose on the lead. He's not going to offer a lot of value for win betting, but in those multi-race bets, he'll be much higher odds. That's the way I'm going to look to play him. I like Cezanne to upset Honor AP in the Share Police Stakes.
Scott, I see you nodding your head.
I think the play in this race is to try to beat Honor AP in the horizontals because, like James said, there's a 4-horse field, and Nodor, I think, is committing to the Ellis Park Derby. And I just don't see Cezanne got to be all in to win this race to get into the Derby. Going to be loose on the lead. We've heard that this horse has talent. I think we see it. Going to get the jump on Honor AP who wants more distance. Sign me up for singling Cezanne in the horizontals.
Dono D'Or should be committing to an A other than, Ed.
Yeah, I completely agree with James and Scott. Only thing I'd add is from a Derby perspective, I think Honor AP, I want to see him win this race if I'm going to like him at all. This is a mile and a 16th. Typically, horses prep at a mile and an 1/8 during a traditional Derby year. Obviously, that's not what we're in this year, but still, given he's lightly raced and the prep's going to be less than a mile and an 1/8, there's no excuses for me if he doesn't win this. If he doesn't win this, there's no shot I'm going to play him to win the Derby at what I would still think is a shortish price, even off a loss.
Yeah, it's strange to me because the Travers is going to be a bigger field. Uncle Chuck's going to go there when he could very well have just stayed here and gotten the points to get in the Kentucky Derby. Kind of a strange decision unless Baffert thinks that Cezanne is good enough to run 1-2, and then he can possibly get the job done moving forward and put himself in the starting gate the first Saturday in September. All right, guys, let's move on to the sprint on the card, which is a win and you're in as well. And Baffert is the storyline here as well as McKenzie is scratching out of this one. And it winds up being a better betting race because of that. The Bing Crosby going 6 furlongs. And Ed, we'll start with you on this one. I mean, it looks like a bunch of, maybe listed stakes grade 3 types competing for a grade 1 prominence.
Yeah, my strongest opinion on this race is it's another example of the graded stakes committee needing to revamp how they do things. This just is not a grade 1 race, period. That said, we started off with the Personal Ensign, and I thought Vexatious had an upset chance, trained by Jack Sisterson. and not much of an upset. This is a more evenly matched group, but we might know the name a lot better, or at least other people will. We got to know it pretty well at Churchill this spring, but he has Lexingtonian here as well. And I think this horse scratched for a reason last week. Obviously, Volatile was part of that reason, but shipping west in these climates, I think, shows a lot of confidence, and I'm going to trust the hot hand of a young trainer.
Yeah, I mean, Whitmore was a mess in the starting gate, and Lexingtonian wound up being the horse that got scratched in the gates. And if you're going to send a horse from Saratoga to Del Mar, obviously none the worse for the wear a week later.
Right.
This horse ran a tremendous race at Churchill last time in the 3 other than, defeating Hog Creek Hustle and Absolutely Aiden, who came back and won a stake race gate to wire at Ellis. And that horse is razor sharp right now. Lexingtonian, my top pick. We'll get to more about that in just a little bit. But guys, Scott, we'll start with you. You saw Lexingtonian at Churchill. Do you like him, or do you fancy somebody else in this California race?
Well, it's definitely encouraging that they think enough of how he's training to send him out west after being scratched at the gate, a week earlier. I'm a little concerned about the inside draw, Joe. He had a perfect outside stalking trip off Absolutely Aiden and another runner that kind of went at it and got the jump and really was impressive, beating Hog Creek Hustle. Also interesting, PR Radio Star, who we saw at Churchill Downs in for 16 and 25, dominate those groups. Went out there and ran a very impressive race against the high-level optional claimers, in great form, but very tricky race here. A lot of horses that like to be right off the lead, but the way the Del Mar track is played over the first couple of weeks of racing, you want to be on the outside and a little bit off the pace. So don't have a real strong opinion in here, Joe, but I would look to those types of runners that are going to come from out of it with a probably fairly contentious pace, with any Portina Storm being the likely speed drawn to the inside, which is where you do not want to be if the track plays like it did earlier in the meet.
All right, James, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think Desert Law is going to be overbet. He ran a good second in this race last year. He's going to be one of the favorites. I agree with what Scott said. I like Law-Abiding Citizen. I think he's going to get that up-close stalking trip on the outside, be poised to pounce, turning for home. Law-Abiding Citizen for me in the Crosby.
I'm just going to throw in Wildman Jack because he was too terrible to believe in the Shakertown. He was the favorite. He was out the back early. He did no running whatsoever. He's not a dirt horse on paper, but he's bred for it. And Doug O'Neill's a little bit sneaky. So if he runs his horse in this race against this competition, we know on turf in the past he's been fast enough, and he does have that outside draw. So I just found that horse to be a complete wild card. Bullet work out of the gate. July 26th, fastest of 107. So maybe that is a good sign. All right, so I'll start because it's on this race. Lexingtonian made it my best bet. I hope that he falls into a decent trip. I was very impressed by the race at Churchill. I think the price is going to be good enough, and this is a horse that I'm looking forward to having a good campaign the rest of the way. Lexingtonian will be my best bet of Saturday. Ed, who's your best bet and why?
My best bet's By My Standards. I know I've talked about a couple other horses who are going to be higher prices. I feel that's more of a gamble, though, against Midnight Bisou, competitive, Jerkens. But By My Standards, I definitely think will be under bet. People will gravitate toward the New York horses. Tom's d'Etat, even as the most likely winner, is the big name. He'll be over bet. I think that creates value on By My Standards. And I'm no cinch to win, obviously, but I do think he's the best bet.
Scott, we love these big stakes days, man. We get to see the stars come out to play, so to speak, but that's meant a lot of chalk in 2020. Maybe a little bit difficult to come up with a best bet amongst those chalks, or did you look a little bit towards a price shot for your best bet to sink your teeth into?
Yeah, when possible, I like to give out a little bit of a price shot on my best bet. And I think both James and I, who will give his opinion, which is obviously not as good as mine soon, but the Jerkens is the best betting race of the day. Clearly, horses like No Parole and Tap It to Win, very capable of winning. But both of us are going to be hoping for a little bit of a chaotic early pace. And I've landed on, as I mentioned, 3 Technique. I like the way this one sprinted. This one's had an affinity for Saratoga. It's been training well. Should get the right trip and get the jump on James's pick, who he'll talk about. But I like 3 Technique, hoping to get a little more than 6-1. But this is a race I'm willing to jump in on both horizontally and vertically because of the many options.
James, I smell a head-to-head wager between you and Scott here. Yeah,
when I heard Scott was going with the Jerkens Memorial, I said, that has to be my race. I got to go against it. No, just kidding. I respect Scott completely. I do, though, like Shoplifted. I was on him last time. Like I said, I didn't like that trip in that race. I think this race is going to set up so well for him. it is interesting. Jose Ortiz was on him last time. He goes to 3 technique, but I do like seeing Tyler aboard him. And he ran so well last year when breaking his maiden, was second in the hopeful at Saratoga. I just expect him to be running late and launching that move off the far turn. I'm going to give it edge to Shoplifted as my best bet of the week, Joe.
Great racing action. Preps for the Breeders' Cup, winning your in races, and a big prep at Del Mar, the Shared Belief of Points race on the road to the Kentucky Derby, the first Saturday in September. For James, Scott, and Ed, I'm Joe. Don't forget you can watch and wager on these races on twinspires.com and on the TwinSpires app. And we hope that the most important photo finishes go your way. Have a good one, everybody, and best of luck.